Hello students, and welcome back to the Lore of the Iron Kingdoms with me, Professor Caster. Today we are going to be continuing our discussion over the Trollbloods Warbeast, and today we get to start on the fantastical Elemental Warbeast that the Trollbloods carry, because as we have discussed before, the Trollblood Warbeast sometimes pull in the elemental traits of the areas they live in. We will be discussing 4 of them today, and then 4 of them the following class. And the 4 that we are discussing today are, in fact, the Ice Troll, Night Troll, Pyre Troll, and then the Slag Troll. But before we begin, thank you so much for showing up to class. And if you could, please like, comment, subscribe, let your friends and fellow gamers know about this particular podcast. It really does help keep this steam train rolling and keep the class growing every semester. And the question for this class, if you want to write it down in the comments now, what would you say is your favorite elemental damage in Warmachine? Whether it be fire damage, corrosion damage, ice damage, or the like, let us know, because it's always fun to discuss what you think the most impactful elemental damage is in the form of Warmachines. Also, a big shout out, thank you, Privateerpress, for letting us keep reading your fantastic lore. And without further ado, let's begin. Alrighty, well, the first Elemental Troll Blood Warbeast that we're looking at is a Northkin variation, so unfortunately we do not have a whole lot of information on these outside of some distant reports from, I imagine, some Cadoran branch way up in the outreaches of the north, but they will be the Ice Trolls. Ice Trolls use their innate connection to the elemental powers of cold to create frozen javelins from thin air. They hurl these projectiles great distances to impale hapless warriors and pierce the flesh of Warbeast. Any who survive the impact die slowly as ice javelins freeze their bodies from within. And I don't know how much of that is hearsay, but if all of that is accurate, then that is a terrifying proposition for any warriors that have to go up against this guy, because even a graze, I imagine, or someone gets hit in the leg, which is usually survivable, is a lot less survivable when you're freezing from the inside out. But again, we do not have a whole lot of information on these guys because they come from, I'm not going to say rumors, but if we're getting them out of Kodor, sometimes things, for anybody who's ever known the Cadoran people, they are very short with their explanations of a lot of things. So, but let's go over their Mark 3 to Mark 4 changes and see if there is anything at all. And as always, we will start with their stat line. So he's still a speed 5, he's still a mat 6, he's still a rat 5, thank goodness for throwing ice spears. He is still a defense 12, he is still an arm 16, he still has a fury capability of 3 and threshold of 9. He still has immunity, slam, and trample, because that would make sense. He is considered a light warbeast. He has dual attack, which makes him even more dangerous because he does have ranged and melee weapons he can use. And he also has Pathfinder, because a lot of Northkin have Pathfinder, because you got to figure out a way to get around that snow and mountainous terrain, which makes perfect sense for him. His abilities that he still has is Regeneration D3, so this model can be forced to remove D3 damage points once per activation. So that is fantastic. And his weapons is his Thrown Ice Spear, as mentioned in the report. He is still a Rat 5, Range 10, Rate of Fire 1, and POW 13, which is the equivalent to what he was in Mark 3. It is still damage type cold, so if they do have immunity to damage type cold, it doesn't do as much damage, because as mentioned, this is just a giant piece of ice that he is throwing at you. And then he has Critical Freeze, so on a critical hit, a model hit becomes stationary for 1 round unless it has resistance to cold, and that is basically the same weapon that he had now. We do not have the Thrown ability on there just because they removed the strength buff, so Thrown doesn't really do anything for it in Mark 4, making it a little bit easier. And then his melee weapon is he's using his Ice Spear as a melee weapon. It is a Mat 6, a range 2, so it is a reach weapon technically. And it is still a POW 13, which a POW 13 can do some pretty dang good damage in the hands of something that's actually hitting the model, so very good. And on his Ice Spear, it also has Critical Freeze as well. So, yeah. And it appears, let's look at his Animus here. His Animus is called Recoil, cost 1, range self, so it can only be cast on himself, or his Warlock can cast it on themselves, rather. Recoil, the spellcaster gains Swift Hunter. Recoil lasts for 1 round. When a model with Swift Hunter destroys 1 or more models with a basic ranged attack, immediately after the attack is resolved, it can advance up to 2 inches. And if you have any, say, warlocks that are running with this guy that happen to have a rate of fire of more than 1, you can get them moved around pretty usefully. So pop 1 move, pop 1 move. Although him being able to get an additional 2 inches of movement after he hits somebody, or after he kills somebody with a ice spear, very useful because he is just a speed 5, so gives him a little bit more mobility, which is always useful for any Trollbloods army, just because they're not all that quick to begin with, unless of course you're running a full pig force, and then they're pretty average. So, but let's move on. Night Troll. For those communities of the Iron Kingdom situated near dark and cave-riddled mountains, the Night Troll is a rarely seen but profound source of terror. The presence of these creatures is marked by an eerie glow at the mouth of caves, luring animals and unwary to a gruesome end. This species has adapted superbly to life in the dark caverns of Imoran's mountains, and the subterranean labyrinths below ancient ruins. As its eyes have atrophied, its other senses have sharpened. By day, the trolls sleep in the recesses of their lairs, awakening with the setting of the sun. With the fall of night, they lurk in the mouths of their caverns, and their quills begin to pulse with the otherworldly glow, catching the eye of animals or careless travelers. The mesmerizing patterns of the luminescence eventually overcome the fears of the entrance victims, which approach heedless of instinct or judgment, only to be caught and consumed alive. This horrific fate is almost certainly one of the truths behind cautionary folktales that stress the dangers of following strange lights into the woods. Trollkins consider night trolls valuable beasts of war, despite the fact that their habits and hunting preferences can be problematic. Being nocturnal, these trolls must be compelled to fight during the day and are temperamental when roused. Still, their savage tempers and effective hunting methods make them lethal and terrifying allies for those warlocks willing to work with them. A foe hypnotized on the battlefield is easily torn to shreds by the troll's venomous, paralyzing claws, and the sight of a ravening night troll feasting on a screaming comrade is a terrible one for any soldiers to behold. So yeah, a night troll, a terrifying troll that kind of doesn't really look like a standard troll, at least the ones that we're normally seeing. I think it's because their quills and rocky formations on their skin are luminescent, which is very different from most trolls. As far as the light in the woods comment, that could also be done up with, say, the Grimkin as well, because a lot of folklore kind of mixes together through stories and how people say as well. So maybe it's a little bit of Night Troll, maybe it's a little bit of Grimkin. You never know. But let's see what their Mark 3 to Mark 4 changes behold, and we can see how terrifying these creatures truly are to the caves of Western Imoran. And as always, let's start with their stat line. He is still a speed 5, he is still a mat 6. He is a melee dude, so he doesn't have any rat. His defense is still 12. His armor is still a 15. He is not very armory, because he's very spindly, as you see, because his main form of attacking somebody is surprise. He has stealth innately, so you can't shoot at him more than 5 inches away, of course, unless you miss with a bunch of AoE attacks. And he has slam and trample as his stuff, and he also has eyeless sight, which is cool because then he can ignore things like cloud effects when he's charging. He doesn't have to see his target to charge into them. Like most trolls, he has regeneration. So this model can be forced to remove a D3 damage points. And then his weapons, he has a few of them. He has his Wicked Claws, his very sharp looking claws that have a mat of 6, range of 1, POW 12. It doesn't seem all that powerful except for he has critical paralysis. So on a critical hit, a living model has its base defense reduced to 5, cannot run, charge, or make slam or trample power attack. So if you get him in, you fish for some crits, you get a crit, and you lock him down, make them easy targets for everybody else in your army, including himself, if he just keeps swinging away. And then outside of those 2 Wicked Claws that he also has his Bite, which gives him a third, a very useful attack as well. So as far as that goes, he is a very dangerous guy. One of the abilities that appears they remove from him is Manhunter, so he can no longer charge living warrior models without being forced. That would probably make him way more broken than he is. Well, technically he's more balanced now, so he is a very useful guy, because being able to put paralysis on anybody is a very useful thing for low rat Trollbloods wanting to shoot at stuff. But his animus has been changed. So his animus was Hypnotic Gaze. In Mark III, for 1 round, enemy models that begin their activation within 3 of this model and in its line of sight have to advance towards this model. That's been replaced with Attractor, which is very similar. Attractor is a cost 1. It is a self spell, which that means it can be cast on himself or its warlock, which is a good if you like warlocks that want to get people close to him. And it says enemy models currently within 2 inches of the spellcaster are immediately pushed 2 inches directly towards it in the order you choose. See, that's why Attractor is better, because then you are pulling them close on your turn and not theirs. And then if you have a warlock who likes to hit people, or as he does, he likes to hit people, it gives him almost, at a cost of 1, an additional 2-inch reach. So after he casts the animus, he can pull them closer to him in case they were just slightly out of his melee reach. So, or if your warlock just wants to pull people close to him, power to him. But yeah, this guy is a very useful troll, especially throwing out the paralysis. Also, he is the cheapest of the Warbeast at a cost of 6. I think the next cheapest is a 7, so this guy can easily be squeezed into most battle groups as well. But let's move on to another terrifying elemental troll. Pyre Troll. Pyre Trolls are able to belch gouts of combustible liquid that ignites in the air, sticks to flesh, and burns at hellish temperatures. Even their skin exudes heat, smoldering ripples that warn the inferno to come. After softening a foe with blazing spittle, a Pyre Troll uses its thick claws to tear apart its sizzling victims. Trolls are a highly adaptable species, able to find niche in every environment. Pyre Trolls are a bizarre and dangerous evolution of the pitch trolls, more common along the fringes of the marshes, particularly east of the Turnian Crag and near Scarfell Lake. Their skin is tinted dark burgundy and ochre to blend in with their red desert sands and better stalk their prey. Preferring extremely hot climates, Pyre Trolls can often be found sunning on scalding rocks. Perhaps their unnatural temperatures and strange eating habits have addled their brains, for they are noticeably less intelligent than most trolls. No one has been able to determine how Pyre Trolls develop their searing exportations. Some speculate it is a byproduct of their digestive distress caused by the toxic substances the trolls consume, including rocks, metal, oil, and plants considered deadly to most species. They particularly seem to enjoy drinking the viscous fluid that bubbles up from the soils of the northern marshes, the same substance refined into Menoth's fury in the Protectorate of Menoth. Whatever the source of this blazing regurgitation, its effects are memorable. Desperate foes thrashing madly about the battlefield in an effort to extinguish the clinging flames. Well, I imagine if it is the same substance that the Protectorate of Menoths use in Menoth's Fury, that stuff does not come off armor, cloth, anything. It just boils onto the skin, which makes that even more terrible in the long run. Oof. Yeah, and these guys are terrifying to behold just because they use fire as their main weapon, and I can see why the Trollbloods would utilize the heck out of these guys, even though they're not as smart as the average troll, which isn't saying all that much to begin with. Having guys that literally just enjoy catching things on fire and eating everything is going to be useful in any kind of battle. But let's see their Mark III to Mark IV changes and see what we can find. And as always, we'll start with their stat line. He is still a speed 5. He's still a mat. Well, actually, his mat got better. He is now a mat 6. He is a rat 5, defense 12, armor 16, fury 3, threshold 9. He still has the slam and trample abilities as most light warbeasts do. And he has immunity to fire and dual attack, which means that he can attack with both his melee and ranged weapons in the same stuff, which makes sense since he is literally vomiting out fire. His abilities include it burns, so if this model is hit by a melee attack immediately after the attack is resolved, the attacking model suffers the fire continuous effect, unless of course this model was destroyed or removed by the attack. So if you hit him and he doesn't die, you catch on fire. which is the exact same thing as he had in Mark III, which is terrifying enough on that one. It's a lone self-defense, especially if guys that are hitting him do not have very high armor. So you best hope that they kill him outright and don't have to try to put out that particular clinging flame. He is a troll, so he has regeneration, so this model can be forced to remove D3 damage points once per activation. His weapons include his Spew of Fire, which is a Rat 5, a range 10, rate of fire 1, AoE 2, so he can hit the model hit plus 2 additional models within 2 inches. He can shoot this into melee with whatever he's fighting with, which makes sense. And it's caused fire damage and it has the critical fire effect attached to it. And the power on this is a POW 12 and 6. So 6 to blast, 12 to direct hit. Very, very useful. Then he has, of course, his melee weapons, which are both open hands. Or his claws, basically. His claws are a Mat 6, range 1, POW 12. And what really makes this guy dangerous is his animus. Well, outside of him already being dangerous and a guy who likes lighting people on fire if they hit him, he has a thing called Flaming Fist as his animus. And it is a cost 1. It is a range self, so him and his warlock can cast it on themselves. As duration for 1 round. And what Flaming Fist does, the spellcaster gains +2 melee damage rolls and resistance to fire. He already has resistance to fire, so this is more of a warlock ability. And its melee weapons gain the continuous fire effect. So basically, if he casts it on himself for 1 point, it takes his claws up to a POW 14, which is great. And then it causes his claws to do the continuous fire effect like his skin does. So he just lights up everybody on fire that he is in melee with. And it is not a critical fire. It is just the fire continuous effect. So it's whatever he punches catch on fire if they survive his POW 14 swinging. So he is a very useful guy, especially if you want to try pulling more fire type stuff into your Trollbloods army, because fire is a very, very damaging thing, as we have seen with the Protectorate of Menoth and their use of it quite extensively. But yeah, let's move on. Slag Troll. The relationship trolls have with their natural environment is different from the others' creatures. In hostile regions where there's little food and life is difficult to sustain, other species will follow an instinct to search for more hospitable homes. But trolls are not so easily driven off and will find a way to sustain themselves on their environment, even if that means eating stone or iron. Slag trolls are living proof that this adaptable species can and will eat anything. Their taste for metal has led slag trolls to metabolize powerful acids able to rapidly dissolve even tempered steel. The species is notoriously ornery, constantly tormented by the metal shards perpetually growing through their flesh. Their habit of spitting corrosive bile has not endeared them to the enemies of the Trollbloods. Slag trolls arose near hostile mountains and volcanic environments and seem to prefer living near semi-active fumarolas and old lava flows. Their peculiar diet has given them a reputation for stupidity, but other trolls admire their intestinal fortitude. The potent acids that accumulate in their guts makes them formidable adversaries, particularly against warjacks, wolds, and clockwork vessels. Yeah, I would imagine anything that spits up stomach acid that can eat metal would be fantastic against most constructs in that matter. But yeah, these guys are, well, metal growing out of their skin, able to dissolve metal and eat metal and rocks, makes them a very formidable guy to go up against any type of construct. I can see that happening. But let's go over their Mark 4 or Mark 3 to Mark 4 changes and see what all they actually do to the constructs of the Iron Kingdoms. And as always, we will go over their stat line. They are a speed 5, they are a mat of 6, they are a rat of 5, a defense 12, arm 17, which makes sense since they got, metal growing out of their skin. They are a fury 3 and a threshold of 8, so these guys will rage a little bit easier than some other ones. They have the slam and trample power attacks, which makes sense for light warbeast. And he has immunity to corrosion, which makes sense since he has corrosive acids in his stomach. And then he has dual attacks, which means he can attack with both his melee and ranged attacks in the same activation. He has the regeneration ability, so this model can be forced to remove D3 damage points once per activation. Some of the abilities that he has lost from Mark 3 to Mark 4 is Assault's been taken out, but it's been replaced with dual attack. Peel Back the Layers was removed. This model gains boosted melee attack rolls and melee damage rolls against models suffering from corrosion. That one's been removed. So it's probably more of a balanced thing, because if this guy can corrode somebody and then pull them apart, that is a awful thing to happen to anybody. But let's go over to his let's go over to his weapons real quick and see what we got. He has Spew Acid, which is a gun which allows him to shoot into melee with whatever he's in. And with this one, he can only shoot into models he's in melee with without any penalty. He cannot shoot out of melee with this. So just want to note that now. It is a corrosive weapon, and it does cause corrosion, which if they don't get it off quickly, it is going to melt them, because it does auto 1 damage points, as we all are aware. His special ability on this weapon is this model gains an additional die on this weapon's damage rolls against construct models, which is phenomenal, because getting a additional die plus a boost, because he is a Warbeast, so you can get up to 4 dice of damage against construct models with this guy. And at a rat of 5, range of 8, rate of fire 1, and a POW 12, that is some heavy damage to one model that you're hitting it with. And then you put corrosion on him as well. If he's still around after he gets, melted, I imagine he won't probably be that useful to his warlock or warcaster, depending on what kind of model it was. And then his melee weapon is his claws. So it is a Mat 6, range 1, and POW 13. And this guy also has erosion, so this model gains an additional die on this weapon's damage rolls against construct models. So this guy is literally designed to take on construct models. So take on Circle Obros, take on any Warmachine, take on the the Cyrus Clockwork folks. But yeah, no, this guy is definitely very specialized to take on construct models, and it would be very useful for any type of constructs. So, and I believe that is also for battle engines, I believe, are also constructs as well. Don't quote me on that, not entirely sure without looking that up, but it would make sense. His Animus is Acidic Touch. The spellcaster gains resistance to corrosion, and its melee weapons gain continuous corrosion. So basically, just like the Pyre Troll, he is able to give himself, or his warlock can give themselves, the corrosion continuous effect and immunity to corrosion as well. So that is phenomenal. And having an additional ability on your melee weapon that already destroys poor construct models is terrifying. So yeah, this guy melts metal, he melts stone, he is a specialized Warbeast that I can see in any kind of Trollblood army going up against any type of Warmachine army. So yeah, but that looks like it does us for today. And then next time we'll be finishing up the rest of the Elemental Trolls, including the Dire Elemental Trolls. But before we head out, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for liking and subscribing and sharing these videos with your friends and fellow gamers. It does really help keep this Steam train rolling and helps us expand the classes for following semesters. And remember, we're going to ask the question, what is your favorite elemental damage type? Is it fire, corrosion, ice, otherwise, electricity? Really, it could be anything. Let us know what you think the most impactful elemental damage type it is for your army. I used to work with the Crucible Guard for a while, and they use every elemental type, and as we're all aware, I worked for the Khadorn army for an extensive amount of time, so ice magic was something that I saw on the regular very often. But let us know. Please comment down below. It does help. And thank you again, Privateerpress, for letting us read your fantastic lore. And as always, class dismissed.